hopefully my voice can carry. I might have to. You think? Where'd Gary go? Did he start? Gary, do you know if the projector can scoot up a little bit, or you know, I've never used this type of projector. Well, like the slide, or is that just?
So you want to go up higher? I don't
yeah, no. It would make sense that that.
Just kind of set
something off. Okay.
As soon as I touch it, it'll go off.
I know. It looks wavy. Like
we need your light off up here too, but you'll be good.
It's got a okay, well, good morning, everyone. Sorry about the screen. It's a little wavy. I'm not sure what's going on. I can't figure it out. I'm Craig Walker. I'm the Executive Director of State Assessments, and I hope you've had an awesome summer so far. It's winding down pretty quickly, and I know you have a lot of questions about how the state assessments, the newest state assessment system is going to work this next year, and I will talk briefly about how it will tie into accountability. Can everyone back there hear me? No, you can't hear me? Okay. All right. So I will try to project my voice. I'll try to do my teacher voice. Might lose it, but just let me know. If you can't hear me, please let me know. Okay. So what I'm going to go over today are some of the overview things of the Oklahoma School Testing Program, talk about national comparisons, state testing schedules, reporting and standard setting, college and career readiness preliminary results. We do have those back from SAT and ACT. Data summits, which is something we're going to do new, and I'll talk in more depth about that. And then finally, accommodations and state testing. Okay, so first of all, I want to point out that I will be discussing the state summative assessment today. So this is the assessments you give every spring, and it is used for accountability purposes. Okay, so I'm going to give you some background if you weren't following along this year. So last year at Engage, we solicited feedback from stakeholders at all the Engage conferences, okay? And basically we wanted to know if you could pick your ideal assessment system, what would you want from it? And what do you not want from it? So we collected that feedback. We did poll everywhere. We had the results up. And we moved forward from there by forming a 95-member assessment and accountability task force that met for several months. And part of the reason why we started this process was because of House Bill 3218, which completely changed the assessment system for the state. And as you are aware, all the EOIs are gone per House Bill 3218. All the graduation requirements that were connected to it, gone. It is now a local decision to determine what assessments are required for student graduation. So it also pairs very well with ESSA and our feedback we have to get and provide to the feds to say, you know, we did have honest stakeholder feedback in our design of our new assessment and accountability system. And this was all published, okay? So if you are curious and you want to hear what was discussed in the assessment and accountability task force meetings, it's all recorded online. So if you go to sde.ok.gov and in the search type HB space 3218, it will have all the audio recordings, all the presentations used, the final assessment and accountability report that were adopted by the State School Board of Education, the legislature, and finally signed into law by the governor. Okay. So I've already kind of gone over this, and I'll just skip past it here. Some of the key focuses of the considerations were, you know, with state assessments. With NCLB, the big focus was all we care about is what? Student proficiency. If you're not showing student proficiency, you're not moving anywhere. You're not doing a good job, right? I mean, that was it, in essence, the whole focus of state assessments under NCLB. With ESSA and our new assessment system and accountability system, the focus now will be improvement. So subgroup improvement, okay, so that will be status, okay, and also growth. So Johnny in 3rd grade compared his results to Johnny in 4th grade. So that will be incorporated into the system, okay. So it won't be about proficient or above students getting a 0 or 1, a binary system. It's not going to be like that anymore, okay. So you will get a true measure. And as a former special ed teacher, you know, when you would get your kiddos and start with them at the beginning of the year, and they're typically, oftentimes, not proficient, or they weren't proficient the previous year, but you get them, and you know you're working with them, you know they're making gains, and at the end of the year when you provide the summative assessment or administer the summative assessment, sometimes they weren't hitting proficiency, and you got no credit for it. Well, that's very not fair. So I think this will be a much fairer system. So even the kids that start at the very bottom of the scale, if they move up, say 100 scale score points, okay, you're gonna get credit for that in the accountability system. Okay, so you will get to actually see that. Let's see what else we got. Identification and prioritization of desired characteristics and intended uses were critical, and I've kind of gone over that. The task force definitely wanted strong alignment to the Oklahoma academic standards, which basically means customized assessments where the item development strongly involves Oklahoma educators. Okay, so if you are aware, if you may or may not be aware, but every single one of our items in 3 through 8 has been vetted by an Oklahoma educator, and it's gone through the item review process. And it gets down to the nitty-gritty of commas and periods, you name it. And that does get incorporated into our item bank. So I just want you to be aware of that. Most importantly, with the change in the removal of EOIs, the big complaint with EOIs was it doesn't provide our students any value, right? So what we want to do, and what the task force really, really focused in on, was we need to have a link from the top at the high school level for college and career readiness, and it cascade all the way down to 3rd grade. So when we get results for 3rd graders, we can say, oh, okay, they're ready for the next grade, and so on and so forth. So when they get to high school, we can say where they are at on the trajectory of being college and career ready. Okay, so these are kind of bullet points within the report. And for 3 through 8, like I said, the main focus would be developing assessments for 3 through 8 aligned to the Oklahoma academic standards, administered at the end of the school year, so there wasn't a big push for interim assessments, and include assessment of writing to support coverage of ELA in the Oklahoma academic standards. So for this year, we had 5, 8, and 10 for the writing synthesis piece, so constructed response. But in future years, we will be incorporating writing in 3, 4, 6, and 7, and it may not be like a 5, 8, and 10 ELA test, but we will have to incorporate some more of these writing processes because they're very integrated with our ELA standards. So that's going to take a couple years to kind of pull that in. So for high school, the task force was very adamant that they wanted us to utilize college and career readiness assessments, which this year we've continued our pilot, and we allowed the districts to choose ACT or SAT. And one of the big things for us at the agency is we have to submit our assessment and our accountability systems to the feds and get approval. So we have to go through this peer review process, and basically one of the big things is, does the assessment line to the academic content standards that are being taught in the classrooms? So we have to show evidence of that. We can't just say, oh yeah, they're aligned. We have to really show evidence. And we have a lot of very smart people, psychometricians that are helping us with that. We work with CCSSO, and it's going to be a heavy lift for us, but we're pretty confident we'll be good on that. Intended purpose and use, as I just discussed, what is the intent of what is the purpose of these assessments? And we need to see value. We need to see, is it telling us what we need to know when students progress from grade to grade, and then when they get to their final destination in high school, are they ready for college or career? So that is the big focus here. Score interpretation. So they did want us to provide criterion reference information, which obviously we provide that through the performance level descriptors, which will remain advanced, proficient, limited knowledge, and unsat. But the real focus will be on scaled scores. So you'll really want to dive in and hone in on the scale scores, because that obviously is going to show year-over-year growth and improvement for students. They also were very clear that they wanted to be able to have some type of national and statewide comparison to contextualize student performance. So right now, when you get the reports and students get the reports, it really didn't show within the state, how do they compare to other students? How are we doing on this kind of metric? So we will be providing that within our student parent reports in the fall. And later in the slide, I'll show you kind of an example of what that'll look like, so you'll get a better understanding. For high school, the task force did want to provide normative information. So they wanted a normative sample based off national norms. So that's why we are moving to the ACT and SAT, because they do provide that for us. Okay, reporting and state comparability. They obviously wanted reporting, and from my understanding, the reporting we have right now through Measure Progress with the aggregate reporting system, if you're not aware, the portal Data Interactions provides really, really, really neat ways to analyze your data, and it gives it to you in a graphical summary and display. So if you have not gotten into that portal and looked through it, it is super user-friendly. It's just a couple clicks, and you're on your way to the answers you want when analyzing the data. So I think we're pretty we have a good foundation for the aggregate reporting right now. They wanted it also to utilize the existing NAEP data to establish national and state comparisons at grades 4 and 8. Okay, so in addition, they wanted us to use NAEP as benchmarking data for the standard setting. And so how that works is with the standard setting, we're starting at our final goal, which is students that are college and career ready. So at the 11th grade level, okay, we're going to do a backwards design. So at grade 8, when we do the standard setting, we're going to look and say, okay, as a checkpoint, here's where we are with NAEP, and here's where we should be. And we're going to be very open and honest about that with our standard setting committee panelists. And then we're also going to go down to the 4th grade and make sure that it is vertically aligned. Because right now, and I've heard these complaints before, you know, some grades, 3rd and 4th are okay, and then you go to 5th grade, and what students have to perform to get proficient is either way higher or way lower. So we're really going to make sure that we have a best fit line as much as possible so it makes sense. Okay, additional national comparisons. So most of you are probably aware we've had Lexiles for many years with our state assessment system. So those will be obviously provided on the score reports, on the individual student reports, and it'll also be included in the Measure Progress portal. So you will get that. It'll be a column in the portal along with the student scores. So we do have a state website for the Lexiles, and let me apologize now. They're updating our content management system for the whole agency. I think for the whole state probably is what's happening. And we haven't really done a whole lot of updates on our web page because we're waiting for the day when they push the button and say, you're on this new system and now you need to upload your documents. So I do apologize for that in advance because I like to get things out, and I know it's been kind of slow going on that. But the second they hit that green button and switch us over, we'll get all this stuff up. The quantiles, that is new, and so that actually provides a national metric that is highly researched that links students' state test scores with instructional resources. So where they're at, it'll say, hey, the student needs to focus in on this specific thing, and it gets very granular. Okay, so it's not a broad context. It gets very granular and gives you good examples of things to do and lesson plans and things like that. Okay, so 2016-17, we have, this is our assessment system. So we had obviously math grades 3 through 8, grade 10, ELA grades 3 through 8, grade 10, science 5, 8, 10, U.S. history once in high school, and then the optional CCRA. Next year, the change, here's the change, and I had to PDF it because the PowerPoint wasn't working right, so it would have been nice to have kind of the slides down. But grade 10 assessment suite is going away. Okay, so no more grade 10 assessments next year. Okay, and no more EOI type tests either. So there will be none of those. So for 2017-18, we have math grades 3 through 8 and 11 for college career readiness assessment. And districts will have the choice of the SAT or the ACT for that. ELA, grades 3 through 8 and 11. And by the way, grade 11 for the ELA portion for the college career readiness assessment, it will include the writing component. So students will have to take the writing portion for the ACT or the SAT, whichever one is chosen. And that will be aggregated into their score reports. And then science, we're going to do grades 5, 8, and 11. And the CCRA will be required for all students except for our 1%. Okay? So all students will take either the ACT or the SAT this year. Okay? So if they're enrolled in 11th grade, we will be expecting them to take it. Okay, so here's an infographic. If you haven't already seen it, I'm sure most of you probably have already seen it, but it just creates a really nice visual. Okay, and you'll see right here, science. We're integrating the science content portion that aligns to our academic standards into the CCRA, and so that's going to be a really streamlined assessment for all 11th graders next year. Okay, so the science content, we've had some questions about that. So what the science content portion for the 11th grade test is going to look like, it's going to be 50% life science, which we've already developed the items for we're good on that. But then the other 50% will be physical science, and that means physics, chemistry, and physical science. Why are we doing this? We really want to provide a balanced and well-sequenced science education, because in our science standards from pre-K all the way up through high school, it's not just life science. It's physical science and life science. And so to really provide that value and provide that information that, hey, students are college and career ready. I mean, what are the hardest college courses you're going to take? They're going to be in the physical sciences. Let me tell you, chemistry, whoo. I mean, that's some serious stuff. So we really need to be honest about that. And that is a huge, the physical sciences are huge for Oklahoma with the oil and gas industry. So it just makes complete sense. What we don't want you to do is say, okay, we're going to put all of our ninth graders in a just basic physical science class. No, that's not what we're saying at all. If you can, put them in chemistry and physics. It's going to align with all of this. And it's going to align with the ACT science assessment. Okay? And it will also increase the dual credit opportunities and post-secondary success. It will be administered next year, and all students will be required to take it. But it will not. It's going to be a field test. Okay, so we will have it will be a field test, but all students are required to take it next year. All right. Here's the testing schedule. So it's very similar to this year's. We revamped it. Yes, ma'am.
So next year there's going to be a separate science test besides the ACT?
Yes. Yep.
Do we think that's going to stay?
Yes, because we have to show alignment to the feds, to our Oklahoma academic standards, and the ACT science reasoning doesn't really kind of get there. So folks that use the ACT, they're going to have to take that extra subtest. But that's required for ACT's composite. So
we have to do it in addition?
Yes.
This year we will just do the ACT?
You'll do both. You'll do the whole. It's an integrated test, so it's college career readiness.
So it will be ready. The field test will
Yes.
be ready.
Yep.
What about history?
What about history? So history, we've gotten rid of all the EOIs. So we are in the process of developing a non-EOI integrated U.S. history test, similar to the science content section, to integrate into the CCRA. Okay. For those students that are graduating this year that need it for graduation purposes, we will be providing guidance in an upcoming communication.
Okay, so the science test will be for the 11th graders then and not the 10th graders?
Correct. 10th graders, no more. It'll be all juniors. All juniors will take the college test. Or, I mean, not the college test, the test required for high school. Okay.
Juniors can take the U.S. history this year too. It'll be ready for them to take the U.S. history test.
No, we're in development.
This year, no history at all.
They get to take them again. They're so excited.
So,
Not the sophomore test, all junior tests.
right, yes. So grade.
It's the ACT.
Okay, so yes, so let me repeat it. So the grade 10 assessment suite this year, which was for all 10th graders, is gone. Okay? So now we're moving to the college career readiness assessment for all juniors. And they are required, all juniors are required to take it. The ACT or the SAT, whichever one districts choose.
But you're developing history.
We are developing a non-EOI history to integrate into the CCRA in the future.
But not this year.
We are developing it this year, but we don't have it yet. Correct.
We will have one in the spring, a field test.
For U.S. history? No.
No.
No. You will not have a field test for U.S. history in the spring. We're starting we're starting the test development right now. So we're working on it. Yep. And it's not just going to be U.S. history, it's going to be integrated. Okay? So we're going to have civics and all those other pieces into it. Yes, sir? Say that one more time. The CCRA will be ELA, math, and science content this year. Okay? In future, correct.
And then we're also going to do the ACT.
Well, so the ACT ELA subtest and math subtest, that's going to be the state accountability assessment.
But you're going to provide the science test and the history test.
We are going to provide a a separate science content test, but it's integrated in the CCRA. This year, though, we're working on the actual test development of a non-EOI U.S. history test.
I heard at the COSA conference that history test is going to count as bonus points. Is that still?
So the details on accountability are still being worked out. They're still building the agency rules. I think you're right, but you know, in the past when we had field testing, like with geography and things like that, it doesn't get put in because it's not an operationalized test. Okay? Yes, sir.
So let's listen so everybody can hear the questions and hear the response. Sorry to step up and be a teacher, but I can't help myself. But that way everyone hears the question and hears the response. We don't have to answer them multiple times. So yes, sir.
The CCR and will be basically your ACT.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they'll take a separate science test.
They'll take a science reasoning test.
Yes, will the science component of the ACT, they'll still be required to take that also?
They
Yeah.
do.
Along with the ACT.
Yes. But if you take the SAT, there's only 3 parts, so it depends. But the science reasoning, and I know Craig explained this earlier, does not fulfill peer review requirements. Other states have already submitted it, and it was kicked back, and it does not fulfill that. So we're listening to what has happened with other states and preventing that by moving forward with our science content assessment. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, but my understanding is there's not going to be a compiling of the ACT science and the standalone science together.
No, absolutely not. It's separate.
So I don't really get that.
It's because we're required through peer review to have a science assessment that aligns to our standards. Science reasoning does not.
No, okay. I was understanding it did fulfill part of our standard, just not the complete.
Right. And that's, I see what you're saying.
Okay.
The thing is, the second we put our items that align to the Oklahoma academic standards into the actual ACT, you can't make the same claims anymore. So it's one of those kind of test design things that sounds a little wonky, but it's going to work out. It'll be fun.
And then what happens is you have a non-college reportable score.
Yeah.
So it's not useful. But yes, there was some discussion about that earlier. So thank you for that question. Appreciate that.
I have a follow-up to that. The 15 points in the ESSA 90-point scale, 15 points for science. Is that going to be like 7 ACT and 8?
Are we going to get to what the tests are going to be?
The accountability is next. So stay in here and we'll talk about it. But I think the answer is no, if I understood your question. But we'll be discussing that in the next session.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, so grades 3 through 8, the testing schedule is going to look like this. From April 2nd to the 20th for paper testing. And for online testing, April 2nd to the 27th. And then, so the bottom here is the CCRA, College and Career Readiness Assessment options, okay? So the ACT initial test date, which is the paper pencil, is April 3rd. And the online window for ACT is April 3rd through the 5th and April 10th through the 12th, okay? And then their accommodations window is April 3rd through the 17th. And the science content piece can be administered between April 2nd and April 20th. SAT's initial date, paper pencil date, will be April 10th. And their online testing window will be April 10th through the 12th. And the same as with the ACT, the science content portion will be from April 2nd to the 20th. Were there any questions about the testing schedule? Yes?
One question.
Sure.
I'm understanding this, if I'm understanding this correctly. If a child for some reason doesn't show up for the ACT, there is no makeup for that? Or
Yeah, there is. I'm sorry, I didn't point that out. Yeah, ACT makeup.
the paper pencil makeup?
Yeah.
So say we decided to do it online, could they still, that
So the online, so every day. Okay, so the online test every day for ACT or SAT in that window is a different form. So yeah, so if they miss the yes, yeah, because so they have to have multiple forms. Okay, so tomorrow you will have your RSA reports, preliminary RSA reports, okay? Measure Progress and eMetric did a webinar on Monday just to kind of rehash the reporting system. So if you're new and you haven't worked with the system, give you some highlights on how to work with the system and get that information. The only information it's going to provide is does the student meet or does not meet the RSA criteria. So that's really what you're going to get out of those preliminary results, okay? And then final reporting, which will have all of the tested grades and subjects, will be on October 11th. So you will get those in the online portal. And then subsequent weeks, about 2 weeks later, you'll get the paper reports, okay? So why is reporting so late this year? Well, we explained it last year based on the testing calendar. This is how it kind of worked out, okay? So our standard setting for, excuse me, our standard setting for all the other, we already did the RSA standard setting in June, and the standard setting for the rest of the subjects is in the week of August 7th, okay? So all the psychometric work that has to go into it, it takes a little while and quality assurance checks and things like that. So that's why we're late this year. But I promise you, the whole goal is to start getting your results back before June 1st. My goal, personally, is by May 15th. Like, I want it given to you guys before you get out for summer. So after this year, that's what we're going to look at. We're going to be looking at. We are required by law to provide it by June 1st. But I want to do better than that because we can do better than that. So, all right. So, so you might be asking, well, why standard setting? So the reason why we're doing standard setting is because we have new academic standards and new assessments aligned to those academic standards, and the expectations are completely different than past. So that's where we have to set those new performance levels for the students, for student expectation. All right. So it's going to be a pretty big push or pull to conduct the standard studies. We're going to have 121 educators in the standard setting meetings making these determinations. And once this is completed and educator committees provide recommendations to us, we then, the agency, goes to the Commission on Educational Quality and Accountability for final consideration. So they actually, CEQA makes the final recommendation, okay? We are working on a toolkit for parents. So we are going to see higher expectations required to meet proficiency, to meet advanced. And we are working on a letter and a different toolkit and presentation, PowerPoints and things that you can use to talk to parents. And in addition, we're providing a letter that goes along with this parent-student reports that really kind of details that in parent-friendly language. So when the paper reports come, you'll also get these other letters that will need to be sent home to parents. Okay, so I just want to show you kind of where our NAEP performance data is in comparison to our state assessment data and the percent of students that score proficient. Okay, so this yellow, it kind of looks like a mustard color here, is the Oklahoma proficiency rate, and the blue is the NAEP proficiency rate. Okay, so grade 4 we as a state are saying 72% of our kids are scoring proficient on grade 4 math, and then when they take the NAEP, 37%. So we see that trend all the way along this continuum here, and there's a huge honesty gap. Does that make sense that we have that much of a gap? I don't think it does. Yes, sir?
We were taking the test last year, and
Yes.
the students they pulled, or whoever chose them,
And so, and you were probably just one piece of the sample, and so they do, yeah, sure. I mean, that makes sense from that context.
So we weren't overly excited about NAEP testing coming in, but it was okay. Then we got the student roster and went, oh, that's neat. And it wasn't real wonderful.
So I want to show you other states that have changed their standards and their expectations. So Utah, here, in 2013, they went through the same thing. Their standards changed, the expectations changed, their assessments changed, okay? So in 2013, ELA, 83% of their students were scoring proficient. 79% were scoring proficient in math. In 2014, that dropped to 42% for ELA and 42% for math. But what you will see also is in the subsequent years, what do we see? We see an upward trend here. So 2015, we saw a slight bump. In 2016, we saw another slight bump. Okay? And Arizona, same thing. We're starting at a new baseline this year. Okay? So please keep in mind that proficiency is out in terms of accountability. I know the first things on your mind is, well, how is this going to affect accountability? Accountability is no longer tied to the NCLB proficiency piece. We're looking at student subgroup improvement and student year-over-year growth. Okay, so that is the focus.
How do you do the improvement module for a third grader that's never had a test before?
So okay, that's a good question. So growth can only be calculated in grades 4 through 8.
The third grade's off the hook.
Right. I mean, in terms of growth, but the subgroup performance, of course, would still be calculated. Yeah. And so there's no growth calculation.
When they start back on the accountability formula, third grade just doesn't have that.
The year over.
Quartile growth like we've had.
Correct. No, you're right. That's gone. Okay. That's gone. And if you're in the next session, they'll get into more detail on all of that. I won't. That's not my expertise. I just wanted to point that out, that it's not going to be focused on proficiency. This is what the new parent-student report looks like, and so this right here with our different performance levels, the advanced, proficient, limited knowledge, UNSAT. That you're going to be used to. You're going to notice that. The scale will change. It's not going to be 400 to 999 anymore. It's going to be more like, I can't remember off the top of my head, 200 to 399 I think is what it is, but don't quote me on that. We will also be providing the quantile measures and the Lexile measures in the report. And down here, where we're talking about context in terms of how do you compare state student performance and how do you get that information? So I'm sorry some of you in the back might not be able to see this very well. So what we have is we will be providing state performance. So your students' performance in each of the standards will be compared to what a proficient student would be performing at on a state level. So here, numbers and reasoning, this student is at what the state target is. And then it shows here 23% of our students are below standard, 50% are at the standard, 50% are at the standard, and then 21% above the standard. So it kind of gives you that context of, okay, where exactly are we in terms of state comparison and state performance. Okay, so something that we've started this year and we're really focusing on is assessment and data literacy. And in our initial work, we thought, hey, we can go out and really help schools with formative and interim assessments and help schools evaluate their system of assessments. Because we were getting a lot of feedback that, these commercial off-the-shelf products are being used, but no one really knows if they align to the state standards and if they're really providing true measures. Well, we kind of found that yes, that is a need, but the bigger need was data access. A lot of folks didn't know where to even get their state assessment data from, And that's why I brought up the fact that the Measured Progress portal is available for your use. And so we really had to focus on kind of square one and say, okay, well, here's where you find the data, here's who you ask to get access to it, and here's how you can utilize it to determine, okay, what are our needs in terms of instructionally, but also with doing our checkpoints with the different assessments, whether or not we buy a commercial off-the-shelf product or build our own common formative assessments. So this will be a focus, and we will really be focusing on schools that are on the school improvement list if they want our help. So we can sit down with them and say, hey, we'll show you step by step how to do this so you can really dive into it and look at it. And I promise you that the data is going to be in a system that is very user-friendly, and that is a big thing. It's really important to me that you guys have that data readily available as soon as possible so you can take a look at it and start making some good decisions. All right, so here are the preliminary results for our CCRA this year. So we had an increase of 3% from school year 15-16 for the optional CCRA. So here's some of the benchmark proficiency rates for ACT. So the ACT English benchmark is 18, and 46% of our students met the benchmark, and 54% did not meet the benchmark. Okay? And this is one of our better areas that we've scored statewide. With the mathematics area, ACT's benchmark to say that a student is college and career ready is 22. 75% of our students were below the benchmark in that area, and only 25% met the benchmark. The reading subtest, this is another area where we have some strength in comparison. I'm sorry, no, that's not true. That was for the English, I'm so sorry. 63% were below the benchmark and 37% were above. And for science, this one's a real kicker. 76% were below the benchmark. SAT, very similar percentages. 55% below benchmark in the ELA section, and 77% below the benchmark in the math. And we had a sufficient sample size this year because Tulsa and Chickasha utilized the SAT. So this is actually pretty reliable data. Okay, state testing accommodations. All right, so there will be minimal revisions for state testing accommodations in 3 through 8 for IEP 504 or ELL. Something to point out, since we are going to start measuring growth for all students, including English learners, there will be no more ELA exemptions for first-year English language learners, okay? And that's because we have to establish the baseline. Okay. So we know they probably are going to score very low, but that's okay because we're measuring growth. Okay. ACT, SAT accommodation. We are working with SAT and ACT to cross our state level accommodation. And I just talked to Todd Lofton, Special Education Executive Services. And it looks like we're going to add a checkbox on the student's side to notify parents that if a state-allowed accommodation is used on the SAT or the ACT, that it will be non-college reportable. Okay? So that's how that's going to work. Of course, as you know, you have to report to ACT which accommodations you're going to use, and then they actually give approval. Okay? And their claim is we're going to give you approval for accommodations that support the claim that this student is college and career ready. So we are working on a kind of a crosswalk. We'll have that out a little bit later in probably early fall. And then the grade 11 science content test, you'll be able to use the same accommodations that you use for all the 3 through 8 state assessments as well. Are there any questions about accommodations that you might have? I know it's kind of new territory, but I think a lot of you are used to the SAT, ACT accommodation, how that process works. Okay. All right. Are there any questions?
I have one on the I know it's expensive to take the ACT. Who's going to bear that?
Oh.
The district or
Oh,
the state?
yes, so the state will be paying for the SAT and the ACT. And that's going to be used as our state accountability assessment too, so it all ties in and yeah.
School or the student
This
no longer has to pay for it.
not when we not so the let me go back to the so the student when they take it during our window that for juniors, they do not state's going to pick up the bill. We have a state level contract. I worked on the RFP. I know all too well. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure everyone's thinking about this question because I'm thinking about it a lot.
Okay.
Previous testers that take the ACT or SAT as a sophomore on their own, pay for it or through a waiver or whatever, they've got a national test score. Can they be used? Do they need to set for this again as a junior?
We have to have a comparability. So the juniors that are taking it, we have to compare juniors to juniors.
It's the peer review
Yeah.
answer again.
Yeah.
The peer review, federal peer review guides a lot of what we have to do. I didn't realize that. It's only my 6 months in the job here in assessment. I'd never heard of peer review. Worked in a district for over 20 years, but peer review guides a lot of those, and peer review requires for accountability purposes that we have an assessment where they're all taking it during the same window, same period of time. So, yes, we've had that question a lot. It's a good question.
So do they have to make a certain score on this ACT for graduation requirements?
No, that'll be a local school board decision, but not at a state level. Okay.
So the state is paying, I want to make sure you heard that. If a school chooses SAT, the state will pay for 10th graders if you would like for them to take the PSAT NMSQT, I think that's what it is, National Merit Scholar Qualifying Test. And the state regents are paying for the pre-ACT for for sophomores if you're interested in that. And of course, the state is paying for the 11th grade ACT. So it is free. I know that I heard a couple of questions about that, so I'll make sure you understand that.
So you said that the regents are paying for the Aspire, is that what?
It's the pre-ACT, and it's in 10th grade, and they're working on communication of that right now, and we hope to have that out or by August 1st or so, because that'll come out through our office. We're working in collaboration with them. That way you can sign up. That's what they're going to be asking and giving you the contact numbers so you can sign up for that. And it will be free as well.
And so for the students who did take the U.S. history exam, you're going to let us know and then
Okay.
You were very thorough. Craig did a great job. Stay around if you want to hear about accountability. Same room at 10 o'clock. Thank you. I'm sorry I stepped in.
I know.
That murmuring.
First year counseling for middle school, do I need one of those pink slips that you're in?
That's like if you're an LPC or something. I think it's not for anything with the agency. Yes, no.
So the state's providing the pre-SAT. They ask about Aspire, that's pre-ACT.
Right. The regents are paying for pre-ACT. The state regents for higher ed, but not Aspire. It's pre-ACT.
Pre-ACT now. So the 10th graders will take that?
If you choose,
If
that's
they
a
want
district
to?
choice.
Gotcha. My counselor. Thank you.
I wonder if we try
I know. Maybe we.
Acting or was it genuine?
Question, and I didn't want to take up
You're fine.
the group time. In the Reading Sufficiency Act, the verbiage specifically says to test the child must test rather than just testing reading ability.
Right, and that's so what we. So the RSA criteria is based only on standards 2 and 4, which are not ELA standards.
Okay.
I mean, they're integrated, but they're
Right,
reading
right,
and
but
vocabulary.
it's just reading, but then.
Correct.
So we get into the issue that we're testing a child's reading ability, but then they're being asked to do. And I realize if you're teaching your ELA standards, you're going to be fine.
Sure.
But okay, so
Yeah, they are. So each of the items that aligns to the standards 2 and 4, those are the only ones counted